Welcome to Tammy Addy. If you're new to sewing, I'm sure you've come across some sewing terms that sound very confusing. Some of these terms include seam allowance, seam, or basting. Well, don't worry. In today's video, I'm going to be breaking down 10 sewing terms that every beginner sewer must know. And by the end of this video, you will have a better understanding of these terms. So let's get started. Our first sewing term is a seam. What is a seam? A seam is where two pieces of fabrics are sewn together. Two pieces of fabrics are sewn together. So this is the seam, and these are the two pieces of fabrics. In order to join these two pieces of fabrics together, we need to seam it down. So we'll just put our fabric on our sewing machine and we'll run a straight stitch on it, and that creates our seam. The next sewing term we're going to be talking about is the seam allowance. What is a seam allowance? It is between the extra fabric between the stitch line and the fabric edge. So this distance here. So the distance here is our seam allowance. And we can have seam allowances from 1 inch to half an inch to 3/8 of an inch. Sometimes you can have 1/4, sometimes you can have 1.5. And it really depends on the project you're working on and the location of, like, where it depends on where on your garment you're sewing. So if it's the hem of your garment, you can add 1.5 seam allowance. If you're sewing the neckline, the seam allowance can be 3/8 of an inch or half an inch. There's no industry standard for seam allowances. Every brand decides on the seam allowance they want to add to their various garments. The next sewing term we're going to be talking about is a dart. What is a dart? A dart is a fold sewn into your fabric that helps to shape your garment. So it's sewn into your garment, not your fabric, sewn into your garment, and it helps provide shaping to your garment. And your dart can have the dart is usually a V shape, and it has the dart end, two dart legs, and a dart opening. And when you want to sew this, let's say this is our fabric. When you want to sew this, you just take it from, it's a fold. So we need to create a fold. So we're going to close from one dart leg to the other. So for example, close it this way. Let me show you quickly what it's going to look like. So I basically I basically took one dart leg and overlapped it with the other dart leg to create a fold in our garment. So this is a skirt. So this is a waist dart. This is a waist dart. Sometimes you can find a dart on your blouse. You can find it on your sleeves. You can find it on your blazer, pants as well. So those are different places you can find a dart on. The next sewing term we're going to be talking about is basting. What is a basting? Can also be called a basting stitch. It's a temporary stitch used to hold your fabric pieces together. A temporary stitch used to hold your fabric together before the final stitching. So it can be done on your sewing machine by adjusting the width and the length of your machine on your machine, or it can be done by hand. So using your hand sewing needles, you can sew in a basting stitch. And basically, let's say for example, you want to sew a gathered skirt, you need to first use a basting stitch, and it's this basting stitch that you use to pull your gathers in. You can also use it on, maybe if you're inserting a certain type of zipper, you put it's a temporary stitch, and then when you're done sewing the final stitch, you take it out. You use your seam ripper to take it out. Use your seam ripper to take it out. So I'm going to show you. So you just take your seam ripper and you just take it out. Take it out quickly, because it's a temporary stitch. The stitchings are long, so you can just take it out like that. So when you're done sewing your final stitch in, you take out your basting stitch. You take out your basting stitch. That is what the basting stitch looks like. The next sewing term we're going to be talking about is clip or clipping. So what does it mean to clip your fabric? Clippings are usually found on your neckline. So when you're sewing your neckline, in order for it to, you need your neckline to lay flat, you need to clip. If you don't clip and you just flip your neckline, to the right side. Let's say let's say this is our right side. If you just flip, you just go ahead and flip without clipping, it's not going to stay. Okay, I've already clipped my fabric right now, but if I had not clipped it, it's not going to stay. You'll be seeing something like, it will be looking like this, like rolling over. Sorry, this is our wrong side. So you'll be seeing the wrong side rolling over into the right side of your garment. But because we clipped it, it's laying. So how do we do our clippings? Basically, you take your fabric, you take your scissors, and you take your scissors and snip. You snip close to the stitch line. You're not cutting across the snip line. You're stopping very, very close to the stitch line. And you create these clippings like half an inch. So about half an inch distance. So you can clip here, and that's what the clipping looks like. And then when you're done clipping, you flip your garment, you understitch. I'm going to talk about understitching shortly. You understitch and then you press your garment. So that is what clipping looks like, or that is what a clipping is. The next sewing term we're going to be talking about is notching. So notching can also be done around the neckline. So we need to, in order for us to reduce bulks around your neckline. So if you're sewing your collar, so Peter Pan collar and even regular shirt collars, you need to put in notches. You need to reduce the bulk when you're turning your collars. So you need to reduce the bulk. So this is what notching looks like. You take your scissors and you cut in like an A or a triangle. So two diagonal lines, you cut them in, notch, another notch. So you can make it at half an inch distance, notch again. And again, remember, you're not notching through the stitch line. And then when you're done notching, you can trim. And we need to reduce the bulk around our neckline. So you trim the excess fabric away. So trim the excess fabric away. Okay, I didn't do this part well. But you trim the excess fabric away. Let me do that again. Trim the excess fabric away. So that way when you flip your garment, when you flip your collar to the right side, it will lay flat. One, two, the bulk would have been reduced. So this side, I trimmed from this side to that side, right? So see, when we look, we don't see bulk there. But on this side, you can still see the bulk here. So notches, where can we find notches? For example, you can find it on your Peter Pan collar or your regular shirt collars. You notch it. The next sewing term we're going to be talking about is understitching. So understitching, you can understitch around your neckline, your pocket, so anywhere. So when we notched, we clipped our neckline, especially after you're done clipping your neckline, right? Let's say this is our neckline. You're done clipping, you'd flip it, flip your garment like this. And then this excess is going to be facing the wrong side. Let's say this is the wrong side of your garment and this is the right side of your garment, right? So let me show you what I'm talking about on this one. So I flip it. I flipped it. This is our garment. This is what our garment looks like. This is our right side. This is our wrong side. Okay. So in order to finish this neckline, we need to understitch. How do we understitch? You would open your garment, and then this excess here, or this seam here, seam allowance here, we turn it, we take it to the wrong side. Make sure it's facing the wrong side, and then you take your garment to your sewing machine, and then you stitch, you understitch from very, very close to the edge. So like 1/8 of an inch, you understitch, understitch, understitch all the way around. When you're done, flip your garment like this, you press, and then when you're done doing that, your neckline is going to look like this. So your neckline on the right side is going to look like this. Your neckline on the wrong side is going to look like this. Obviously, when you're sewing, you make sure the thread you're using matches the color of your fabric. I use black thread so that you will be able to see it. So this is what your neckline, these are the things, the steps you need to take when you're sewing your neckline. You'd clip, on the stitch, press, and then your neckline would look like this. And like I said, depending on the type of neckline, so depending on the color you're sewing, you will need to notch rather than clip. Okay, so that's what understitching looks like. And the next sewing term we're going to be talking about is edge stitching. What is edge stitching? Edge stitching is a roll of stitching that is sewn very close to your seam or your fabric. It's usually about 1/8 of an inch or 1/16 of an inch, and you find it around collars sometimes and around pockets. So I have an example of edge stitching. So this is our pant. It's usually found on the back of your jeans. So this pocket, we have a pocket here. This stitch over here, this is an edge stitch. This is an edge stitch. And the next term I'm going to be showing you is similar to an edge stitch. Sometimes they use it interchangeably. Some people use edge stitching, some people will use top stitching. Even I sometimes when I talk, I would mistakenly mix both of them together. So the next sewing term is top stitching. And top stitching is a visible stitch that is sewn on the right side of the fabric. And it's used to reinforce seams or add stylish touch to your jeans, your jackets, or your bags. And it can be functional or decorative. So I just showed you the edge stitching, right? This right here is your top stitching. And they just use this stitch to reinforce this pocket. So yeah, they already edge stitched this pocket to this pant, but they now added another top stitch to reinforce the pocket to the pant. And it also looks decorative, right? It makes the pant look beautiful. So at the top of the pant here, this is an edge stitch, this is a top stitch, this is an edge stitch. I would say that the major difference between edge stitching and top stitching is the distance from the edge of the fabric. So this edge stitch is about 1/8 to 1/16 of an inch distance. This top stitch is about 3/8 or half an inch distance. And they can both act as decorative or functional. And this is another example of a top stitch. So a top stitch on your zip, right? So when I was done sewing in my zipper, I then top stitched it. I'll say that this top stitching is acting more as a functional stitch, but it obviously can also be decorative. But the major use for this zipper is a functional stitch. So in order to finish the zipper, I did an half an inch top stitch around just to finish the zipper. And the last and final term we're going to be talking about is interfacing. Interfacing is the material added to a fabric to provide structure and support. So this is what it looks like. And you add it to your fabric. So you fuse it to your fabric. So fusing means that you iron it. You will iron it to your fabric. And this helps create structure onto your fabric. And then when you're done pressing or ironing your interfacing to your fabric, see, it provides, can you see the structure it has given this fabric? It has given a fabric structure, and this can be found on the cuffs of your shirt, on the collars of your shirt. It can also be found on the body. So if you're sewing a bustier or a tube dress, tube top, you will need to interface it depending on the fabric that you're using, really, depending on the fabric you're using. And I'm going to talk more about the different types of interfacings and how to use them in a separate video. And that's it. Now you know 10 essential sewing terms that will make your sewing journey much easier. Let me know which of these terms was new to you. You can drop it in the comment section below. And if you found this video helpful, do not forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of my beginner friendly sewing tutorials. Thank you so much for watching. Happy sewing.